G'day everyone, welcome to this week's Life on the Hulls. Well, a lot of planning in this episode. Basically, to get this thing out of the mould has taken a pretty Herculean effort. There's been a lot of comments about what I should be doing with trolley jacks, cranes, farm tractors, you name it. It's been a pretty complicated task, and this episode I'm going to explain how that all works and how I got to this point. But we're certainly not going to be demoulding it on video for a couple of weeks yet. There's a lot to cover before we get to this stage. I'll give you couple of little sneak peeks before we go forward. But the underneath frame of this mould needed to be reinforced in a certain way. We had a bridge structure like this, and when we lifted it, we wanted to make sure that it didn't sag. So that's where I'm going to start this video. I employed a technique where I welded some lugs to the framework of the mould and then used three-ton acra props to actually push the actual legs and the framework of the actual mould apart to make sure that as I lifted it there was no chance it was going to cave and trap my boat in there or damage it. So that was the first part of this video. The second part, we're going to go into getting this big rig back under the mould, and man, I don't admit to many mistakes, but I totally cocked up. I want you to remember that this video was filmed in 44-degree heat. It was the hottest day we've had in over 12 months, and having my brother involved, tempers were frayed. There's a few little swear words in this, so if youngsters are watching it, please do not listen to my expletives as I do a hell of a lot of damage to my pickup truck, and just stupidity. When the heat's on and when it's hot like that, you got to make very good decisions, and on this case I didn't. So let's get into it. So the original frame that came with the mould was about 7 I-beams running directly underneath the mould at ground level. I actually re-engineered this about 18 months ago into a bridge type arrangement that went up and over and back down, and I'll put a link to the actual video up here for you to go back to see where I actually did all the welding here. But what I decided was that we needed some way of bracing the bases of these uprights so that there was no chance of it actually collapsing inwards when I ultimately put the lift underneath. So I came up with the idea, and a couple of people had suggested in fact that I put a couple of acro props. In fact, I ended up with 3 attached to the uprights that still operated cleanly with the truck in place. So these acro props can be tightened and physically tensioned outwards to hold the framework in the exact position that it's lifted in, and it ended up being a really good solution. It cost me a few $100 to actually buy these new acro props, but by putting these in place I was able to lift the thing and simply be able to remove them and then roll the truck out and then put them back in place for when we ultimately crane the mould into its final resting place. And you can see here where I've actually got it tensioned and the boat's off the ground. So there's a sneak peek of the demoulding day. It's been so nice doing something different. I've had 2 or 3 days of hacking away at this truck, getting it all ready. I've confirmed with the crane driver we're on for Saturday week, so tomorrow about a week away, so I've got a shitload of things to do. First thing I need to do is make the drawbar for the backhoe to be able to tow this rig away with the mould on it, which is going to go down about 80 metres down the road. And the second thing I need to do is do the other end, so I need a pintle hook on each end. We're actually going to attach this to the bucket of a backhoe with a couple of giant shackles. That's going to be the easiest way rather than getting in a semi with a dog with a pintle hook closure on it. We know the rig works, we know it's going to basically tow it. Whether or not it lifts it is a different story. So I just spent about an hour drilling these holes out nice and slow. Only just got them to the right size. And I was in town today and I bought some high tensile pintle. They're high tensile bolts. They're 1/2 inch, but they're actual designed for pintle hooks. So pretty happy about that. So you know that's going to be good. I'm going to use this twice as bar. Once to get the mould over to Greg's across the road, and the second one is to launch my boat. So it's not going to have a lot of use, but well worth paying for the good bolts. rather than just cheap bloody coach bolts, which I considered using, but they were about 20 bucks cheaper and not worth the effort. And I'm back here. I've just pulled the site apart again, and I'm going to put that truck back in under there. I'm hoping I've got enough room because there's a boat here with a wheel off it right where I'd like to back, but there's always pallet jacks. I can always move a boat. But yeah, this bugger here, we forgot about it, and it's got a wheel off. So I might have to put a pallet jack under it and move it back, because you know, if it's in the way and I can't back this truck in, I'm in trouble. But I've just done all the preps up here on the truck. I've got to wait till my brother Brett and Janet are going to come up here for about half an hour, and we're just going to get these jacks all put in place. Still got to hose them all together, but I figure while it's the weekend and it is going to be 43 degrees here today. It was 42 here yesterday, and I welded in all these gussets. Had to worry about fire because I was really concerned I was going to set fire to the place. So you just got to be careful when you're welding in heat like that. It was a bitch of a day yesterday. I mean, it was probably the worst heat we've had since we had the fires this time last year, or in February or January this year. But yeah, so that's all ready now. All the jacks are in place. Everything's functioning. I know everything's moving smoothly. Just got to get all these jacks lined up. Hopefully they all work. I haven't tested them all, but I'm sure they will. They're straight out of the box. But yeah, at this stage, we're on target for next Saturday's demoulding. Now I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things here. You'll notice here the Acra props that protrude through the base of the truck. They're designed to go up to give support to the ultimate lift. Now you'll notice here this particular one is actually only around about 10 centimeters off the ground. Now I have a very steep driveway to navigate here, and in the heat and in all the excitement, I did actually neglect to lift this one up. This is particularly the only ones at the front are the only ones I really need to lift up, and the result, yeah, it wasn't very nice. It was the beginning of a bit of a problematic morning for us, and I'll show you why. Took a chunk out of the road. Oh shit! Just bent my Acra props, didn't I? No one's got to go up now. Get that seat down. Make it up. Hold on to it for bang it up this way with the seat. I'll go forward and we're going to take it again. Right, stop. Can't go forward, mate. Rossco, forward about a foot. Rossco, just take it forward a fraction, mate. It's just, this is caught under your back here. You've got to get it forward so it just drops so we can get this out of the way. Speed. Just, Ross, just take it forward, it'll come off. It'll go higher. If I go forward, it'll go higher. It will. Do you want a hand? What was that, Janet? What was that? What happened? The drawbar fucking broke. Pin all to come off. Right, I had no choice other than to roll all the way forward and get that pin all back on. Go super slow, Ross. No. I don't know. Yeah, that's the line. Get back line. How far do you have to go? Fill the back wheel.
Well, you're going to hit the ground with the top.
Fill the back wheel on the ground.
Or you fish the ground with your prop.
You're on the ground, Ross.
No, he's not.
Oh, he's not.
You alright?
Yeah.
I want you to get it done. Just good or what?
Alright, Ross, you're clear.
Do you want to explain to us what's going on here, Rossco?
Look at the car. Fuck me dead. I've got it on film. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I think we need a bit of closer motion for this moment, though.
This was my fear. This was my fear, and it happened. But the Ranger held true. One way to fix something, mate, with an angle grind. Good job you can get them cheap, eh? So the problem with this chassis was that it had an engine cradle there that was actually quite low. That did need to be cut out because that actually is one of the reasons why the drawbar at the angle actually was forced upwards and jumped off the pintle hook. And the second reason why was...
You got it? What's that thing?
Okay, there's a good reason why that came off. It's because in my excitement I forgot to put the pintle hook spring in, or the pin. That will stop it popping off. So hopefully that's the end of it. Actually not too bad given what it could have been. Once again the effort with the steering began again, and in our effort here we realised that we had a problem with the centre pin of the steering that was leading from the pintle hook. All of that action earlier had actually created a problem and moved the centre pintle hook bracket that I'd welded up and put in had become loose and slid sideways, so it created a little bit more work, and as a result I had no lock on the steering. So we used a pallet jack and a trolley jack to actually manhandle and skull drag the bastard back under the mould. Ultimately we got it back in place. I was then able to reposition the pintle hook into the centre where it belonged, and in fact I welded the actual bracket to the cast bogey, I guess you'd call it. Problem number two. This acro I had to grind off, so it's a write-off. So I've just found a replacement. I'm hoping it's going to be long enough to do the job. The only thing is it's going to need a little bit of work on it. So yeah, the issue I've got here is that this isn't going to line up. So if I want to use this one, I'm going to have to grind off the edges of this and then re-drill the holes for the studs there to match this one here. But it might be a cheap solution rather than going and buying a new acro. I'm going to grind that off and just square that off a bit. It's going to be more than enough, I think. Okay, next job. We're just ticking off the list here, mate. We've got to blow some holes in the steering pipe so I can put a chain over the top, and I'm going to have to use my plasma cutter because it's water pipe and I can't seem to get in there. So I'm going to blow a couple of holes in here just so I can hook shackles up to attach a chain to the top of that to stop the drawbar from popping out. Can't see what I'm doing. So there, you reckon?
Whatever you say, Captain.
Right, that'll be alright there, won't it?
Aye, aye. Very impressive, isn't it?
Much better than drilling, mate, eh? I mean,
Laser.
It's not exactly a hole, but it does the job, doesn't it?
Laser.
It's an absolute beast, isn't it? It's like Star Wars. I just love it. I don't want...
Mate, beautiful.
Job done.
Look at that.
Aren't they amazing things, eh? Oh, can you kick that chain over to me? Alright, so imagine the drawbar. Just come over the top. Imagine the drawbar is hooked in here. That's the drawbar.
See you, mate.
See you guys. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hook a chain from there over the top with a couple of shackles. Done.
You've done well,
I
Captain.
reckon that'll be fine, eh?
Yep.
Alright, cool. Job done. That's the last job I need to do on the truck. Now with the truck all squared away, I want to discuss the site constraints we have. We have quite a deal of problems here with the site itself. It is 36 metres wide, and on there is a number of buildings. Now if you have a look at this drawing, which is actually to scale, you can see that the building opposite my tent, or the Catamaran tent, is actually 9 metres away from the actual tent itself, and the boat itself is 12 metres long. Now I'm going to do an animation here, and I'll put quite a bit of work into this to try to explain how this is all going to unfold. We have the actual tent site with the hull in it currently, and the truck, obviously you just saw us, we've put that away, so that's actually been driven up and placed back under the actual Catamaran hull. Now in the coming week I'm going to be doing test lifts and making sure that that all works, but you'll see here that the hull itself at 12 metres long sitting on the truck has to then roll out, but there's a slight constraint with the tent and also a squeeze on the other side with the building there. The hull will then be demoulded with a crane, and then the truck or the rig with the mould on it will actually roll out of the gate and down the road and be stored down at our mate Greg down the road. Now we've come to an arrangement with him for storage down there, which is fantastic because this is going to allow me to progress quite quickly having the boat demoulded. The truck will then be brought back in to the site, put underneath the fresh white Catamaran hull that we've just demoulded, and then it will be put back in place in the tent. So there's a lot of lifting, a lot of moving, and it is a mega move, and it will be obviously a difficult morning when it actually happens, but we're getting ready for it. The next week or so I'm going to be doing quite a lot of prep for this, so stay tuned guys, and I'll see you next time on Life on the Hulls.